I caught up with him in his constituency and asked him whether the unwillingness of the police to cooperate with investigations wasn't giving the impression that they were completely out of control.
Well, yes. I think what it tells the public is, it would be wrong to say it's institutionally corrupt, but there's an institution unwillingness really to face up to the fact that when things go wrong, you have to have a very clear and forceful approach to putting it right. And I think the public probably feel that the institutions involved, the IPCC, the police themselves, are not really doing as much as they ought to do to put things right.
Now, the Prime Minister said this week that he was willing to look at ways of strengthening the oversight of the police. What do you think should be done?
Well, in the final analysis, I'd actually have a royal commission. I think the problem is sufficiently serious. But on a more tactical level, there are a whole range of things you could do. Number one, I would look again at the whole question of the officering of the police and how we train and select them. I would look very hard at the IPCC. It does some good jobs, but it's under-resourced for what it does. And I would frankly create a whole much more powerful institution, which you might think might be staffed by untouchables, people who have a very rigorous approach to this, probably not actually in the police themselves, with a career structure completely separate from the police. And then I'd go in for things that are now being tested. I aired this idea of putting video cameras on every policeman, basically recording everything they do, and that's being tested now in 6 authorities up and down the country. So there's a whole range of things you could do, and I bluntly think all of them are necessary.
Now, perhaps in a way, one of the worst cases was the Andrew Mitchell case, because if the police can fit up a very senior member of the government, then ordinary people, and particularly people perhaps from poorer areas, from the wrong end of town, aren't going to stand a chance. How urgent is it to start taking some of the measures perhaps that you've suggested?
Well, what you've described is actually the real importance of the Andrew Mitchell case. I mean, in a way, he's a big enough lad to look after himself, and he's got friends like me and others who will help. But the simple truth is that if something like that which happened to Andrew Mitchell happened to a youngster on the streets of Handsworth or Brixton or Manchester or whatever, then they probably wouldn't be able to deal with it.
And do you think the Prime Minister and the government is treating this, clearly he said he was prepared to act, but is he treating it with enough urgency?
Well, I think there's always a understandable reluctance on the part of any government, and maybe particularly a Conservative government, to challenge the police, because they are so important to upholding law and order. And bear in mind, the vast majority of coppers are very good. They joined up to, as it were, feel the collars of villains and protect the public, but they're let down by a number of their colleagues and let down by the fact that the system doesn't sort that out. So it's not unnatural for a Prime Minister to be cautious about it, but I think we've got to the point now where it does demand decisive action.
David Davis. Next week, MPs will